Yes, you can glue feathers on a dead duck all you want, but it still won't be able to fly. What am I getting at? In 1983, a landmark study was published titled A Nation at Risk. This report made it very clear that American schools were failing, and it touched off a wave of state and federal reform efforts. But today, decades later, everyone knows the nation is at even greater risk. Our problem is not with the feathers, but the duck. The public school system is dead. It's tough to get back to the basics of education when the real basics have been eliminated, even outlawed. So what are the real basics? Let's start at the beginning. Planet Earth and everything in it belongs to the Lord. He owns the chair you're sitting on, the room you're in, and the air you breathe, the food you eat. He owns every credit card in your wallet, and he owns the banks that process your every transaction. The Lord sustains the electronic pulses running through every computer and cell phone on Earth. He owns the trees and stars and rivers and seas. It's all his stuff. The temporal and the eternal, the seen and the unseen, are his. This fact, this truth, provides a unified field of knowledge and a unified view of everything. Let's call it a UNIVIEW. I think we can agree this is basic Bible 101. Not only does God own the earth and everything in it, He created people for the purpose of managing it. God made it very clear in Scripture that humans are to rule over the planet. In Genesis chapter 1, God told the first humans to fill the earth and subdue it. David said in Psalm 8, "You, Lord, have crowned humans with glory and honor. You have made them rulers over the works of your hands." In reality, we are God's deputies on assignment with an earth-sized jurisdiction, and God never rescinded that assignment. It was His first commission. And with that commission, let's understand that the true purpose of education is to equip the next generation to rule well over this material world. I repeat, the purpose of education is to equip the next generation to rule well over this material world. Now here's another mind-bending basic. There is no secular world, and there are no secular subjects.
Whoa!
God created all things good in the beginning. Even though it got messed up in Genesis 3, He still is creator and sustainer of everything, and still holds all things together by the word of His power. Whatever is profane in this world is a twisted distortion of God's good creation. Yes, we live in a broken world that needs fixing, but it's still God's world, and there's nothing secular about that. Show me a single place where the Creator is irrelevant, and I'll show you the so-called secular world. Show me any subject matter that can be divorced from its divine origin, continuing existence, and God-ordained purpose, and I'll show you a secular subject. But there is no such thing. Every fact has context, and it's the context the Creator provides that we have eliminated from public education. I'm not as concerned about students in state schools becoming atheists as I am about students becoming dualists, with a split view of reality in which a so-called secular realm functions quite well on its own, where 98% of life happens, and so-called sacred spaces are confined to personal prayer or to what goes on in church on Sundays. They have no unified view of Christ's all-inclusive domain and their role in it. The biblical UNIVIEW has been forgotten. It's gone. It no longer exists in public schools, and sadly, it's rarely even mentioned in most of our churches. But since Christ's ownership is over all, how can He be irrelevant to banking, science, the environment, or the public square? This is what's called the sacred-secular divide. It's a mental virus and can be deadly. Yes, Christianity is very personal, but it's far from private. That's because Christ is not private. He's relevant to 100% of life. This is where America got off track in the 1800s when we cracked the door open for the privatization of Christianity by separating Christ from math, science, history in secularized state-run schools and restricted Him to one's personal life and church. But 2 + 2 = 4 has a divine purpose, and that purpose helps us to rule well over planet Earth. Teaching this purpose is now against the law. Prior to the mid-1800s, formal education in America was mostly the concern of the church and distinctly Christian educationalists, such as Noah Webster, one of our founding fathers, the schoolmaster of the Republic, and the author of Webster's Dictionary, a UNIVIEW masterpiece. But through state-run education, America divorced Christ from every subject in the schoolhouse and relegated him to a very narrow, private sphere of life called religion. Christ was okay for church and the prayer closet, but nothing more. We buried the truth that the entire earth is his and all it contains, from Main Street to Wall Street and everything in between and beyond, including the state itself. The founders' concept of separation of church and state has been grossly distorted. Yes, separating the church from state control and not allowing the church to control the state is definitely what the founders wanted. But separating Christianity from the practical functioning and maintenance of the state, our institutions, and our culture was not even on their radar. How do we know? The U.S. Supreme Court of 1892 said, with no less than 87 precedents, our laws and our institutions must necessarily be based upon and embody the teachings of the Redeemer of mankind. It's impossible that it should be otherwise. In fact, in 1831, the well-known French historian Alexis de Tocqueville came to the U.S. to find out what made America tick. And in his subsequent book, Democracy in America, he wrote, "The Americans hold Christianity to be indispensable to the maintenance of Republican institutions. This opinion is not peculiar to a class of citizens or to a party, but it belongs to the whole nation and to every rank of society." De Tocqueville further documented, "The Americans combine the notions of Christianity and of liberty so intimately in their minds that it's impossible to make them conceive the one without the other." Now that's a UNIVIEW. It wasn't like this in France. The United States was surprisingly different. We were, that is. Webster said any system of education that neglects Christianity is essentially defective. And now, not only is the duck dead, but the whole culture is on life support. The children were infected by a new religion without God, called secular humanism, which was promoted by John Dewey, a committed atheist, secular humanist, and the father of American progressive education. He rightly called secular humanism a faith. Yes, a religion. And the children, as well as their parents and pastors, bought into the bogus idea that a so-called secular realm was not only necessary, but desirable. What we must realize is that the sacred-secular divide, a supposedly neutral and public replacement for Christianity, is actually anti-Christian, and there was no wall of separation between Dewey's godless religion and the public schools. We were conned. The whole country was conned. In 1963, when the Supreme Court banned mandatory reading of the Bible in government schools, Justice Potter Stewart argued that this decision led not to true neutrality with respect to religion, but to the establishment of a religion of secularism. By the 1970s, secular humanism had thoroughly displaced Christianity at school. Yes, the secular supremacists got their way in the 1960s and 70s when dualism became law in our schools, and the biblical UNIVIEW was officially banned. But here's what we absolutely must understand. Adding prayer and Bible reading to public schools now will not fix things, as long as dualism rules in the classroom and the biblical UNIVIEW is banished. As long as dualism is the rule in the 97,000 public schools of America and the biblical UNIVIEW is outlawed, no real fix is possible. State-run education under current laws cannot be reformed. Yes, you can glue feathers on a dead duck all you want, but it still won't be able to fly. The duck has been long dead. Teachers, if you're called to be a Christ-following teacher in a public school, then stay there and be one. But don't be silent when it's your turn to speak, and never be willing to teach a lie. It may cost you your job, but standing on the side of truth is often costly. No one can command you to do what God forbids you to do. Dr. Francis Schaeffer said, "Truth carries with it confrontation. Truth demands confrontation, loving confrontation, but confrontation nevertheless."
So, is there a solution? Indeed, there is. Let's start here. There are roughly 350,000 churches in the U.S., which is 3.5 times the number of public schools. The setup, the infrastructure, is already in place. In those 350,000 churches are an estimated 8 to 10 million 9 to 12-year-olds. Why is this important? Because the years 9 through 12 are the formative years. This is the prime time to build the basics of a biblical UNIVIEW into the minds and hearts of the next generation. We need to target those 8 to 10 million kids through the 350,000 churches. This does not mean we don't need to target the 9 through 12-year-olds in Christian schools. We certainly do. But in reaching the churches, we will also reach those who still attend state-run schools for one reason or another. So, how can we reach them? Well, here's one way. Through a game. One that's easily accessible online and played on screens from laptops to smart TVs. Does such a game exist? One does. It's called the UNIVIEW Game, and it's unlike any game you've ever seen before. I'm going to turn this over to my friend Matthew, who helped create it, along with Dr. Christian Overman, who was a Christian school headmaster for 14 years and traveled the globe teaching Christian school teachers how to connect any subject at any grade level with the bigger picture of a biblical worldview.
Hi everyone, my name is Matthew. I'm in the 7th grade, and I want to tell you about something that I think could make a big difference for kids like me. It's called the UNIVIEW Game. At first, you might think it's just another board game, but it's not. It's actually a fun way to learn how everything in life connects to the Creator, King Jesus. Not just Sunday stuff, but regular, everyday life, like school subjects, sports, music, pets, even the news. Sometimes it's easy to forget that Jesus is Lord of all right now, not just after his second coming. He has everything to do with all that's happening on planet Earth. And that's what this game helps us see, because it shows how all of life is connected to Christ. Everything is unified by Christ's ownership of all things, and his authority over the totality of creation. There's no such thing as a secular world. That's a bogus idea. It really makes you think in ways that connect Christ to real life. And when kids like me see the whole picture, we can live with whole purpose. I think this game is perfect for Christian schools, churches, homeschool groups, and even family nights. It's not boring. It's not cheesy. It's actually really interesting. You learn a lot just by playing the game. And the best part is, it helps you understand how to live like your faith really matters every day, not just on Sundays. So if you're a parent, a teacher, or a principal, I hope you'll check it out. It's not just a game. It's a worldview wake-up. It's a tool to help kids like me grow a strong foundation and live with purpose in God's world. Check it out.
Parents, grandparents, pastors, and educators, we have our work cut out for us, that's for sure. With God, all things are possible. Let's restore the UNIVIEW, God's UNIVIEW. As Abraham Kuyper, the Dutch theologian and former Prime Minister of the Netherlands, put it, there's not a single square inch in the whole domain of human existence over which Christ, who is sovereign over all, does not cry, mine.